Learning is the schutz for Shleima Filan Chai Baserach. We're on Daf Nun Zayin Amen Aleph. 6 lines from the top. Hahu Avoda Dahav Birim. There was an incident that occurred in Birim. Dahu Ovid Klechavim with a guy. Dahav Kasalik Bedikla. Va'isi Lulove. He was climbing up on the palm trees and bringing down lulavim. Bahadi kanachas noga bereish delulve bechamra shaloi bekavan. He unintentionally poked the head of his lulav into a yid's wine. So we had brought the machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rav Nosson earlier, that the Rabbanan held. The Rabbanan says if a guy was measuring the wine, a yid's wine, the Chacham say whether he does it biyad or if he does it with his foot, yimacher, it has to be sold, meaning it's mutter bahana and aser b'shtia. And Rav Nosson said biyad it's aser, meaning aser bahana even, and he has to get rid of it. But if he measures with his foot, then he could sell it. It's not aser bahana. So the question over here is, when he touches the yayin with his lulav, which is also he's not doing it having in mind to be nasachet. He's not mixing it for avodas kechavim. It happened unintentionally. What is the din? Does that, and he's doing it also in this case through an intermediary. He's using a lulav. He's not touching it directly with his hand. Shar Rav lizvune lo'ev de kechavim. Rav allowed him to sell it, the yid to sell that. He said it's not asa bahana. Amalei of Kahana Rav Asil Rav Amar da Amar Tinik ben Yoimei hu oisa yayin nesach. You're the one who said that even a Tinik ben Yoimei, even a 1-day-old baby who's a guy who touches wine, makes the yayin nesach, that it's asa bahana. Now, as obviously an infant doesn't have any intention to be menasachet, doesn't have intention for avodah zarah, doesn't have any intention for anything. So how could you say that this is mutter bahana? Amahu emer da'amiyana b'shtia bahana miyamri. That which I said that it becomes aser when a baby touches it, it's just that it's that it's aser to drink. I didn't mean to say that it's aser to sell it. So over here also, you can sell the wine that he touched with the lulav. Since it was done unintentionally, the Chacham will only geyser to aser it b'shtia, but not bahana. Gufa, Amrav, Tinik ben Yom Oisa Yayin Nesach. A Tinik, a single day old, who touches wine makes it Yayin Nesach. Which we just explained to mean only iser shtia. He can't drink it, but not that it's aser. It's not treated as yayin nesach, that is aser bana. Someone who buys an eved from a non-Jew, and this eved that was purchased, the Jew was mal him, gave him milah, but he didn't do tefillah, so it's not yet the conversion is not completed. He's not megayer. This Ovid Kechavim is not yet treated as a Jew. He's a fully a guy still. If someone has a shivcha, that again, the shivcha was not meguyer, and she had a baby, and then that baby had milah but not tefillah, again, it remains a full-fledged Ovid Kechavim. So roikon umidrason b'shuk tame. Their roik, the saliva of this, either this Ovid Kechavim that was purchased and wasn't mal, didn't get tefillah, or a baby that was born to his shivcha knainis that did not get tefillah, the roik of such a eved or baby eved is going to be the saliva, umidrason, or something that they are leaning on, even b'shuk, even though they're in the shuk, even though in the marketplace, and we know the general rule is Safek Tuma B'Rshus Harabim is mutter, tummy. Nevertheless, it's going to have the din tumah. There's a din tumah that all oivdei kechavim have a din like a tumas ziva, like a zav. A zav has a metama, his roik, his saliva, and something he leans on is metama. This oived kechavim, who didn't have a valid tefillah, is going to be metama in the Rishus Harabim, just like even though sveik aitar, it's not even going to be considered a sveik aitar. It's going to be a full-fledged vadai iser tumah of zav. Va'ami lo tar, and there's another sheet that said no, that it's going to be tar. That when the chum not geyser, this is a the chum not geyser on milsa delay shchicha, oived kechavim who has a mila without a tefillah is an unusual circumstance, and the chum will never geyser the iser of the tumas zav on such an oived kechavim. So that was as far as the din tumah of this purchased oived kechavim, this purchased Eved Knani who didn't get a tefillah, or this born Eved Knani who didn't get a tefillah. Yenon, what about the yayin that such a person touches? So it depends. If it's a gadol, then the yayin that they touch becomes yayin esach. Ketanim ein oisim yayin esach. But if they're a cotton, then what they touch doesn't become yayin esach. How do we determine what's a gadol and what's a cotton? A gadol just means that he's old enough to be Avoda Avodah Zara. So let's say if a 7-year-old idol worshiper kid already knows about his Avodah Zara and he touches yayin, that's going to become yayin nesach, because we assume when he touched it, he had in mind somewhat to make it into Avodah Zara. But below that age is not considered. He's not capable. We don't think he's going to use it for Avodah Zara. So when he touches the wine, it doesn't make it a yayin nesach. But this is shver and rav. Katanim yes gedolim in katanim loy. He's saying that katanim there's not aser. Now, Rav had said that a ben yoimai, a oived kechavim ben yoimai, makes the yayin that he touches aser b'shtia, and we're saying so. Rav said it, stamazai, that it's aser. So it means that people will be machmer and even not sell. It's not so terrible. But if you say that ketanim are mutter, the Torah wouldn't say that unless it meant it's mutter altogether. It's mutter even b'shtia. This is just saying as a general rule that ketanim are mutter, meaning even b'shtia. We have to understand that when the brisa said at the end that ketanim are mutter, it's not talking about both of the cases. It's not talking about the case of whether the yid purchased an oived kechavim and wasn't toivelin, or a case where his shifcha knainis had a baby and he wasn't toivel. He says it's only referring to the case of bnei shevachas, the second case, where his shifcha that lives in his house had a baby, and this baby was never exposed to avodas kechavim at all. He was brought up in a Jew's house, and that's a special heter that if such a baby touches, it's mutter even b'shtia, because there's no chash whatsoever of the baby being oived avodas kechavim. He was never exposed to it, even besides the fact that a baby doesn't have any intention for avodas kechavim. Even if he wouldn't be old enough to have intention, he doesn't because he's never exposed to it. What about the fact that we compared? We said Avoda min oived kechavim shemalav v'lo yitavlu, v'chei bnei hashvachas shemalav v'lo yitavlu. We said that the shvachas are compared to the oived kechavim. It sounds like they have the same din, but we're saying that there's a special dispensation just for the bnei shvachas. So Gemara, no, aroikenu midrasan. When it says v'chein that they're treated the same, That's only on the first end of the brisa. Legabi the tuma of the saliva or something that they leaned on. That then over there, there's taka no nafkamina. The Torah says that, I'm sorry, the Chachamim were geyser a takana that a guy has a din of a tumazav, and that is regardless of the age of the or regardless of what how this Ovid Kechavim got into the situation, whether he was purchased or whether he was born.
Yeah,
Does
we're
that
talking about we're cautious that even a newborn has tumas zav.
It's not a chshash. Tumas zav is a takana that the Chachamim made on on any guy. It's not it's not at all. It's not nothing to do with the chshash that he's going to do something. It means midaraisa. There's no such thing as a tumas zav for there's no such thing as a tumas zav on a Ovid Kechavim. The Chacham will geyser it, I think, just to keep for chasnas, to keep us away from our Ovid Kechavim. So it's not really relevant what his intentions are. So we say that there's no difference whether it's the guy got involved because he was purchased or whether he was born into the Jew's house. But what the second in that we said that the yayin becomes yayin nesach if the child was born into the house that the chacham were not geyser on. Second marahani chalamanda amar tameh alamanda tamer mayikal meimer. If you remember in the brisa, we had two versions of the brisa. One, Manda Amar said that when you buy the Eved from the Eved Gechavim or child who was born, Roikin Midrashim Shuk Tomei, and others say that it's tar, that we do not geyser, we don't make this gzera of chasnas, because since it's like we said, since it's an unusual case, the Chum were not geyser on a case where he was mal v'loy taval. So according to that, why would we say v'chein if not for the din of yayin nesach? Because there's no reason to say v'chein b'nei hashvacha shamalu. Certainly, if a purchased eved has a din that he's tar, a b'nei shvachas, the baby who was born into the house is going to have a din, is going to be tar. So why would we have to say v'chein? It's coming to tell you the other way around. That the Avodim, we were talking about the Yayin Nesach. But we're saying that Avodim have the same day as Mei Shvachas. Ma Bnei Shvachas, Malav Tavlu Hu Da'osin Yayin Nesach, Malav Tavlu. Just like a child that's born, if he's it's only because he didn't get tefillah. But if you had the tefillah and he became a full-fledged Jew, the baby is not going to make the yayin nesach. Av avodim came. Even if you buy an eved and you're mal and toivelim, so he now becomes a full-fledged Jew. There's not going to be a din yayin nesach. Lafukim der of Nachman Amar Shmuel, because there's one mandam who says even after a ger is misgayer for a period of time, we're chayshish that he has still feelings for his old avodah Zara, and he makes his yayin nesach. Sounds very. I see you're getting very disturbed at the idea that we should treat a ger with such disrespect. A ger, the ger has to be makabel Torah, right? We know this is the bedrock principle that the ger is only good when he's fully megayer, when he's not.
It was not only that. I mean, we also warned against oppressing the gear.
Yes, this is going to be very insulting. So yeah, so Taisvis says that this is only Gabi an Eved, because we're chayshish that an Eved who's Megayer, maybe he's doing it because he wants to move up out of his lowly status. So there's more of a reason to be chayshish that his gerus is not sincere. I don't know if that makes you feel better about it.
That's totally understandable. Because I
Okay.
mean that's
Yeah, but the problem is, then how could we accept his gerus if we're chayshish that he doesn't mean it?
well, he becomes a ger by default when he's being freed. As long as it's an avid, he's not a ger.
Right.
So when he's freed, it's not like he has a choice.
Well, what do you mean? It's not
Uh,
like it.
if an avid knani gets freed, he becomes a full-fledged yid.
I think that you know what? I don't remember the details. I think we had it back in Bava Metzia,
I
but
think that was the halacha. So
yeah,
I'm kind of going off that assumption. So like it's not like he had his choice.
yeah. I'm gonna admit I used to know have this. I used to know this, and I don't remember. Um, listen, we're talking about an Eved who's going to become an Eved Knani. So he's not becoming a full-fledged Jew, even though I said that. He's Legabi Yayin Nesach. He's gonna become an Eved Knani that has. We're not talking about Mishacher. We're talking about when you buy him. We're saying that
Okay,
when you buy him, he has to do you do Mila and Tefillah on him. Then he gets the mitzvahs of a Isha, and he has to be Makabal. That means you could have an Eved Knani who's not Makabel Tyru mitzvahs, and he doesn't get the Mila and Tefillah. He just remains like a Kinyan Daman. You just own him without the status of an Eved Knani.
so he's definitely not a gear in
I mean,
the.
he's a ger to the extent that he's Eved Knani.
He's
That
a forced semi gear.
he has to keep Shabbos. He can't eat treif. He has all the lois essays are uncommon, just like a woman. He's just potter from mitzvah seishas man grama.
Right? So it's understandable that you wouldn't trust him because he has no choice.
Well, he does have a choice. He could say, "I don't want to be makabelit," and then you don't do the Mila and Tvila on him.
Okay,
He
so how
remains
is
in the
he?
status as just a purchased worker.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of
No,
that. I thought when the yid buys an avid knani, automatically you
no, I don't
impose
think
on that.
so.
No, it's
I
not.
think he has to. The guy, the Eved Knani has to be makabel that he wants to get the higher status of being an Eved Knani, which brings with it obligations of his owner to him, and he has also all the mitzvahs that he has to keep. You can't cram down on someone Yiddishkeit.
Okay, I wasn't aware of it. That's why the whole concept was a little puzzling to me.
But you think about it, right? Does it make sense that a person could keep Shabbos if he's not makabel it?
No.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. Yeah.
So
But then so you do Mila and Tefillah, and then when you Meshacher him, I think then, since he was Makabal on himself originally, when he became an Eved Knani, to have the Mila and Tefillah, when he's Meshacher, then he automatically becomes I should say, then he becomes a full-fledged Yid.
right, okay. So there is a possibility of owning an avid knani who's not mechuyev in any mitzvahs, wasn't makabel anything.
I don't know much about what that status would imply. I think it's just like it's basically like hiring a worker. Right. I guess I don't know. I don't know how it would work. I don't know. That was like real old-fashioned slavery, I guess.
Right,
I guess there was such a concept. I don't know. I don't know if you're allowed to keep a guy with you like that, right? He's not gonna be able to touch your wine. It's gonna
right.
be a difficult situation to have him.
So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of problems.
Yeah. You have your Trumas and he's gonna be messing up. He'll mess up everything. I don't think anyone wants that. I don't know. I don't know how they dealt with it. Okay, but we're learning Avodah Zara now. We're not learning Avodim, so we'll put it on the side for now. So this is Rav Nachman. The Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Lekech avodim and avdi gechav mal pishem mal v'tavlu oitzin yayin esach ad shetishke avodas gechav mipiyim. Nachman Amar Shmuel says that even after um even after they get Mila and Tefillah, they still do yayin. They make it yayin esach until they stop talking until the words of avodas gechavim go out of their mouths. Kamash malan deloy. So that's what we're telling you over here. That no, when you buy an when you buy an eved, not like Rav Nachman Shmuel that we taka don't wait this amount of time. Gufam Bernachon Mashmuel Kecha Avodim and Avdi Kechavim Avi Shemal V'Tavlo Oisin Yain Nesach Hach Tishka Aviz Kechavim PM the Kama. How long is that period of time after your Mal and Tavel an Evet to become Ovid Kecha to become an Evet? Amar B'Shuban Levi At Shnei Masach Chodesh. Takes 12 months till we know we've drummed any zeicher of his avodah zara out of him. Eisvei Rabbi Rav Nachman, halakech avodim and oivdei kechavim, shemalu v'loy tavlu. Someone who buys an eved from a non-Jew, and he did mila, but he wasn't table, so he remains a guy. V'chein b'nei hashvach shemalu v'loy tavlu. We're quoting the brayso that we said before, or b'nei shavach. The same thing would be for b'nei shavachas shemalu v'loy tavlu. Roiken umidrasan b'shuk tami. Ba'amr latar. Yenam gedol moisen yainesa ktanim einois yainesa. So we're just quoting the same brayso we said before. Eloi gedol ve'eloi ktanim gedol sheyodim tiv avodos kechavim mishamsha ktanim sheyodim tiv avodos kechavim mishamsha. So this din that we said at the end, the got gedol moisen yainesa ktanim not depends on whether they're old enough to recognize what an avodah is. Katanim yes, but the problem is it said malu v'tavlu in malu v'tavlu loy. It's mashma only if they had mila without a tefillah. But if they had a mila and a tefillah, then it's not going to be yasser. But Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel just said that we're chayshish for 12 months that it should be yasser. So why this brisa is l'chayra? The diak from the brisa is mashma that once there was a mila and tefillah, it immediately becomes a mutter. The yaina is not yain esach. It's like Gemara Tegumah B'nei Shvachas, very similar to the previous Gemara. Now we're answering the kasha on Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, as opposed to before we were answering the kasha on who was it? On Rav. But we're asking that the price is mashma not like Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. So we're answering is talking about B'nei Shvachas. The B'nei Shvachas are always going to be mutter. Even Rav Nachman Shmuel doesn't say that if a shivcha has a baby in a Jewish home and that baby did not get the tefillah yet, that we're not going to have to wait 12 months that the yainam is going to be yain esach. Since it grew up in the Jewish home, there's no chashash, there's no shaychus to avodah zara, so we're not worried. There was no takana now. Which sounded like it says v'chein that we're saying the same din on the shvachas, like we said about the purchased slaves. I reckon a midrasan. We're talking, like we said before, the same shaklatay before. It's only talking about the din tuma of the saliva and that which the eved leaned against. And that we're saying that it's the same din for the purchased eved as well as the born baby eved. Again, we have the same problem. It doesn't make sense. Why would we say if it's tar, certainly if the purchased eved is tar, the baby that's born is also going to be tar. So he says, no, it's coming to tell you that the avodim are similar to the meishachas. My meishachas gedolim hu da oisen yain nesach. Even just like Bnei Shvachas, the Ketanim do not make yain esach. Avodim also, if you buy an eved, the Gedolim only the Gedolim oisei yain esach, but the Ketanim do not make yain esach. According to Rav Nachman Shmuel, this brisa is coming to tell you not like Rav, which was the original. We're inverting the sugya. Before we said Rav said that the din is to be lafukim than Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman Shmuel says that we're saying that the din of gedolim that even ketanim, that even by avodim that you purchase the gedolim do yain esach, but not the ketanim, not like Rav who says when you purchase an eved. Ben Yaimai is going to be already aser for Yayin Esach. Kamashmalan Deloy. Hahu of the Dahava b'mechuza. There was an incident.
I'm sorry. The question: what the law means that we're not going like Rav.
According to Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, he says that this brisa is coming to exclude from Rav. When we learned the sugya according to Rav, Rav said it's coming to exclude from Nachman Bar Shmuel. So the big chaylik, each one doesn't hold of the other one shita. Well, the final explanation is now we asked the brisa as a kasha on Nachman Bar Shmuel's din that he said a shivcha that you always have to worry about, that for the first 12 months that an Eved has in mind for his Avoda Zara, and therefore it's Yayin Nesach. So he says, so we had the whole Shak V'Tarya. What about the Bryce? So the Bryce is mashma that for everyone it's mutter right away. So he says, no, it's not coming to tell you that. It's talking about Rav's din. It's telling you not like Rav, that Rav says that a Ben Yoime is immediately Yasser. He's saying that it's not, it's nishtazai. I'm sorry, right? He says Ben Yami is immediately Avodah Zarah. He says no, it's only a gadol that makes yayin nesach.
And not like Rav who holds Ben Yoima.
Right, exactly. How of the Hava Mechuza? There was an incident in Mechuza. Also, Ovid Kechayev Ayel Chanusa the Yisrael. An Ovid Kechavim came into the Yisrael's shop. Amalu Isluchu Chamer Lizvuni. He asked the storekeeper, do you have any wine to sell? Amrulei loy. And the storekeeper, he wasn't interested in selling wine to a guy because he knows it's going to cause all kinds of problems. It's going to touch his wine and answer it. Have Yosef Chamra bedavlo. There was wine that was sitting in a bucket. Shadi beyadi, the guy stuck his hand into it, shichshich, and he stirred it. And we're always worried if a guy touches wine, there's a concern that he's having in mind to be menasachet. But in this case, he was really doing it just to show the owner that you do have wine. Don't tell me you don't have wine. It's right here. He said, so the owner, and he said to the owner, "Isn't this wine? Look, this thing that I'm putting my finger in, isn't it wine?" He wanted to get him. The guy, the Jewish store owner got mad because the guy made him problems. Shaji Ladana, and he threw the bucket into a barrel of wine. So he just made his problems worse by mixing it with a whole barrel. Shayu Rava Lizvuni. Rava said you can sell that whole barrel. You don't even have to. You're not even asa bahana. You can't even. There's not even a restriction that you have to deduct the value of the bucket that had become yayin nesach. He says the whole thing is mutter. You could have a no by selling it to Ovid. If the Rav Huna Bar China, Rav Huna Breder of Nachman, Rav Huna Bar China and Rav Huna Breder of Nachman disagreed. Nafik Shipura de Rava, the Sharu. Rava sent out a proclamation that it's mutter. And Nafik Shipura de Rav Huna Bar China, Rav Huna Bar China, Rav Nachman va'asri. They sent out proclamations that it also. And the essential issue is over here we don't have an indication that we don't know for sure that he didn't have in mind for Nisach, but we have a plausible explanation that he was just doing it, the guy was just doing it to show that he has wine, but his intention was not necessarily to be Menasach. So therefore Rava said it's mutter, and they disagreed and said it's us. Ikler of Huna Breder of Nachman LeMechuza. One of these Manda Amram who said that it was Aser came to Mechuza, which was the location where Rava was located. Amalei Rava Rav El Yakim Shame. Rava said to Rav El Yakim, his Shamish, Troik Gali, go lock the door, the lacy inshi the nitrid. I want you to tell everyone, nobody, Rashi explains, said, lock the door, I don't want anyone coming in. I know the person who disagrees with me is here. Rav Huna was a very chosh of a person. I don't want to have to deal with this whole situation. As we're going to see in a minute, Rava was already chayzer from his din. He also held it was aser. He didn't want to embarrass himself by admitting it. And you're going to see that it didn't work out. Oligabe. What happened was Rav Huna came knocking on the door, and Rava had told his shamish, don't let anyone in. But the shamish, when he saw Rav Huna, the gracer of Huna, he said, listen, he didn't mean for him. Even though that was exactly who Rava had in mind, the shamish thought, he thought he knew what to do. He said, I'm gonna have to let in Rav Huna. Amalei ki haygavna mai. So Rav Huna said, what about that proclamation that you issued? What's the din? Amalei aser afilu ba'ano. He said it's aser ba'ano. Rava backtracked on what he had said. Said it's aser ba'ano. So Rav Huna said, V'amaru da'amar shikshich ein oisei yayin esech. So then Rav Huna said he called him out on it. He said, that's not what you said originally. You sent this whole proclamation around the whole mechuzah saying that it's a mutter. So he said, Rava denied it. He was kaifer bakal. He said, no. When I said before that it's aser,
Mutter.
I'm sorry. When I said it's mutter, I didn't mean that the actual wine that was in the bucket that got thrown in. That's einachanami asabana, and you have to deduct it from the value of the rest. I was just talking about the rest of the barrel, which nobody disputed. Even Rav Huna, they agreed that the rest of the barrel is mutter. There's no din that we say that it's not bottle because of the chumrah of avodas kechavim, since this whole thing is just a gzeira. Because we don't think that he actually had in mind nisach. He didn't have in mind avodah zara. So there's no problem with the rest of the wine in the barrel. I just meant to asa the bucket itself. I tak agree with you that the bucket itself is us. Amar Rava ki asoil pumpadisa akve nachmeni shmaiso masnisa the asid. Rava then explained why this is all, by the Rashi explains, this is all a ruse. Rava really had meant at the beginning to say the whole thing was mutter. But when he got caught by Rav Huna, brother of Nachman, he denied it. Taisus is very bothered. You see, there's a huge Taisus. Taisus said this, like, what kind of business is this? Rava didn't want to admit what he held, and he's embarrassed to admit it. Since when do we have Amoraim who are embarrassed to say what they held? If he was Chayzer, say I was Chayzer. Why would he just lie and say I never said it? Says a whole different pshat, which with a different taich, different girsa. But in any case, Rava was Chayzer. Rava Kiyasel was Akfa Nachmeni Shmaitzu Masnisa, the Aser. He said that Nachmeni, meaning Abaya, brought me Shmaitza halachas and Masnisa, meaning Gemaras and Masnisa and Brises, that prove that it's Aser in this case. Shmaitza dahu uvda dahav ben Ardoi, for Aser Shmuel, the Tveria of Aser Rabbi Yochanan. He brought these cases that this incident happened in Harda, and Shmuel said it's also it happened in Tveria, and Rabbi Yochanan asked. So that's so he had incidents that proved Mises that proved that Allah is that it's also. For Amri lay, and I said back to Abaya, you're trying to prove to me from these stories maybe the reason over there was because in Tveria and Harda they weren't such upstanding citizens. So that's why Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan had to answer it, because we were scared if they were matter it, they'd be makel in general in Yayin Nesach. For Amri Li, and then Abaye said back to me, he said back to him, so how could you be matter over here saying because they're not Bnei Torah? You're living in Mechuzah. The people over here are even worse. This is from a long time ago. This is Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel were well predated Rava. They were much earlier, so this Kanu Adara, so even the Shvacha citizens were better then than they are now. So you should answer over here as well. So that was where Abaya caught him from a Shmaitza from an incident. Masnisa, the Agdamim, Ovid Kechavim. This is someone who would go around. Rashi says Agdamin is a guy who has an Adam Hamamuna Lishmar Hamidus B'mitzvah. It's a surveyor that goes around to measure people's containers, a storekeeper, to make sure that their Midas and Mishkalits are accurate. So he's sent by the king. And the Toyim Hayayim V'nasa Sirsa B'nein. So he went and tasted the wine as he was going around. He made himself comfortable. He stuck a straw into the barrel and drank some of the wine. Or so that so the wine came through the tube and the straw moved the wine. or he took a cup of wine and returned after he drank it. The Chamim asid the wine in the barrel. My la bahana l'chayra. We say that asid it means bahana. So you see, the guy who's measuring it, he's doing his job. So we know a lot of things are mutter when you do a job. We don't assume he's doing for Ovid kechavim, and nevertheless, it's also bahana. So Rava said, no, that's not a raya. It's not a fakert b'shtia. It's only talking about legabi drinking, but it's not talking about the hana. And my whole din was that it's mutter b'hana. I never said it's mutter b'shtia. So Abaye said back to me, if they wanted to say that it's only also for drinking for shtia, but not for hana, it should have said yimacher. It said in the Sefer, if a Rashi says a meshuga ovid kechavim that stuck his hand into a chavas, into a barrel, thinking that it was oil, and he turns out that it was wine, meaning he had no intention, he didn't expect it to be wine, so clearly he didn't have a machshava of avodah zarah. There's no avodah zarah with shemen. The Chum said it should be sold. And so in this case, they said yimacher. So if the first meaning that it's also b'shtia and mutter b'hana, so why in the first case of that brisa? Why didn't we say in the first case of the brisa also say yimacher if they meant that it's ad mutter b'hana? So Gemara to Yufta to Rava to Yufta. This is taka the reason why Rava was chayzer, because this was a raya fakert from him that it's mutter and that it's also. Okay, we'll stop over here and Be'ez Hashem continue tomorrow.
Yes, go ahead.